We begin tonight in Gaza, where Palestinians have been fleeing Jabalia as the Israeli tanks push into the north of the Strip. The sound of air fire and tank shelling could be heard as people walked and ran in the streets, carrying what few belongings they could. Jabalia is Gaza's largest historic refugee camp. Residents said tank shells were landing at the center of the camp and that airstrikes had destroyed clusters of houses. A number of people were killed in the assault.
The tank is behind the classrooms in the schools. God is our Savior and the disposer of our affairs. We did not want to leave until we saw it with our own eyes. We did not want to leave.
I looked and I saw that the tank was behind. I said to them, the tank has passed, leave. We are not scared, but it is the children. If my daughter had agreed to go, I would not have left. God willing, we will return. We don't know where to go. We have been displaced from one place to the next. And now we have left. We don't know where to go. We are running in the streets. I saw it with my own eyes. I saw the tank and the bulldozer. It is on that street.
Well, Israel is marking Memorial Day, which honors fallen soldiers and civilian victims of wars and conflicts. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu attended a ceremony at a cemetery in Jerusalem alongside bereaved families. He described the war on Gaza as a war of independence and said it was far from over. Well, for more on those stories, I'm joined now by Arise International correspondent Faith Orr. Good to see you, Faith. Let's start with the latest that's coming out of Gaza.
Well, we've been hearing from Hamas that there are running gun battles with Israeli forces on the streets of Jabalia and on the streets of Rafah. We're also hearing sirens in Israel because Hamas, Islamic Jihad and the other armed groups are firing rockets into Israel. So fierce fighting, some of the most intense fighting in the north and in the south of the Strip that we have seen in many, many weeks. We've heard from the Israeli military that what they're trying to do in Jabalia is stop Hamas from re-establishing there, stop it gaining more ground in the north. We've also heard just in the past few hours from Hamas that they have lost contact with four people who were guarding 4 captives. Those captives include Hersh Goldberg Polin. Now, he was one of the people who appeared in a video issued by Hamas a few weeks ago. We don't know if they've been killed, we don't know if they've been rescued, we don't know what has happened there. I would suspect had they been rescued, we would have heard from the Israeli military, of course. All we know is that Hamas says they've lost contact with the fighters who were guarding those people. All of this causing so many people to flee, not just in Jabalia, but in Rafah. 360,000 people have fled Rafah in the past few days since this assault started. The streets there are completely empty, but in a huge contrast, they've been going to Al-Mawasi, they've been going to Deir al-Balah, where the streets are just overcrowded. People are trampling over each other.
And I mean, it would appear from what you're saying that Rafah is being steadily emptied, almost with the intention of turning it into a ghost town. And this seems to indicate that the Israelis are actually pushing in. I mean, do we know if they've committed ground forces yet?
Oh, you mean Hamas admit themselves that they are fighting them in the streets of Rafah and in Jabalia. We've heard from them, we've heard from residents there that troops are on the ground, but also backed up by these intensive airstrikes, particularly in Jabalia. We've seen huge airstrikes killing a number of people.
Well, the reason I say that is because the Israelis are still insisting that their operation is limited.
We've discussed this before. I think they probably have a different definition of limited to the people who live in Rafah would believe in such a limited operation. We know that dozens of people are dying. The death toll now actually is over 35,000, 35,091, and almost 79,000 people wounded, and of course many, many more under the rubble. So the situation is desperate for people in all parts of Gaza.
And the Israeli justification for launching such a large-scale assault on Rafah is because it says there are several Hamas battalions there and potentially Israeli hostages too. But we've heard that the Israeli army, as you mentioned earlier, is going back into Jabalia, further north in Gaza, which they had previously said they'd cleared of Hamas fighters. Is it possible to tell exactly what is going on?
No, I don't think so. I think without being in there, how can you tell? You have to take one side or the other side's word for it. Israel have previously said they cleared Gaza City, and then they were still attacking Gaza City. Oh, we've cleared Khan Yunis, and then they assaulted Khan Yunis again. There are fears in Rafah. The medical staff of Kuwait Hospital, for instance, have been told to evacuate. It is the last functioning hospital in the area. They have been told to evacuate. We saw what happened in Al-Shifa. We saw what happened in Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis. When the Israeli forces go into these hospitals, they tend not to leave very much behind. Staff and patients come under heavy gunfire, and eventually when the troops withdraw, the place is left in ruins. So they haven't gone in there yet, but the fact that an evacuation order has been issued for the Kuwait hospital for the medical staff there has everyone in the area worried.
And so in a nutshell, I mean, the point you're making about the Israelis returning to places they said they had already cleared, I mean, that is the Israeli military dilemma, isn't it? And that's what Antony Blinken was warning about when he said that you can go into Rafah, but you won't be able to destroy Hamas because they'll filter away and regroup elsewhere. And that appears to be what is happening.
Well, exactly. I mean, they have a huge network of tunnels. People around the world keep telling Netanyahu that you're not going to achieve your aims in this war. You're not going to completely destroy Hamas. It's not a possible task. He is determined to at least keep up the pretense that he can do so, because it's very much political suicide if he doesn't. I mean, his government will simply collapse. We've seen Israelis angry today. I mean, it was Memorial Day, but some people have even been stopping and destroying food aid from getting into Gaza. So the strength of feeling amongst the Israeli public is very, very strong on both sides, on the people who want the war to end and on the people who want to see Hamas wiped out of existence. And we have seen them today stopping trucks in the West Bank that were destined for Gaza, pulling the food off, destroying it all. So yeah, as we say, a strength of feeling there, which is reflected in the government, and that is why he is adamant.
And talking about strength of feeling, we understand that the situation is causing grave concern inside the top echelons of the Israeli military. And their worry appears to be that without a plan for what happens when it becomes obvious that they can't defeat Hamas, that is something the Israeli government has not been able to articulate in any detail at all.
Well, no, exactly. And it's not just Hamas that's a problem here. Remember that this is now spreading regionally. So there's also Hezbollah to consider. There's also the Houthis to consider. They don't have this get-out strategy. I mean, I hear some people talking about, well, Hamas didn't have an exit strategy. Hamas never planned to have an exit strategy. The Israeli military have gone into this and they are aware there is more and more dissent appearing in the ranks, because they are aware now that the government simply does not have a plan for how this is going to end.
And away from Gaza itself, Lebanon's foreign minister has been expressing fears about a possible expansion of Israel's military campaign against Hezbollah. We know the two sides have been attacking each other along the border more intensely. What's the latest on that?
So we have heard from Lebanon's Foreign Minister Abdallah Abu Habib. Now, he is concerned that the almost daily cross-border fire that we've seen since October between Israel and Hezbollah is going to expand into a greater conflict. He does say it's unlikely that Israeli troops would actually cross the border, but his fear is that the airstrikes will become fiercer and fiercer. Tens of thousands of people on both sides have already been evacuated. So we need to remember that it is affecting both sides here in Lebanon and in Israel. But it's unlikely that they would cross the border. It's also interesting because can Israel actually take on the two fronts at the same time? We know Hezbollah is much, much stronger than Hamas, both Iranian-backed, of course, but Hezbollah has an arsenal that includes precision-guided missiles that can strike deep into the heart of Israeli territory, of course, given that the Iron Dome doesn't shoot them down first. They fought a war before 2006. It was a month long and it was devastating for both sides. So there is the fear, not just, the foreign minister today is voicing that fear, but there's been a fear amongst this for a while. What he's actually said, I'll just read you one quote. He says, if there's an escalation, it'll be from the skies. I don't think Israel will carry out a land invasion. Whatever they want to achieve from land, they can achieve from the skies, and they have dominance in the skies. So that really is the fear, that they are going to use that superior air power, and many more civilians will also pay the price.
Faith, thanks very much indeed. Faith Orr is Arise international correspondent.